The Battle of Cannae went down in history as Rome's greatest military humiliation and the tactical masterpiece of one of the most brilliant generals who ever lived. On a single summer day in the year 216 before Christ, Hannibal Barca demonstrated that military genius could overcome any numerical advantage. With fewer than 50,000 men, he surrounded and destroyed a Roman army of more than 80,000 soldiers, in what became the perfect lesson of how intelligent strategy can defeat brute force. This battle forever changed the way war was waged. The double envelopment maneuver that Hannibal executed is still studied today in military academies throughout the world. But it also marked a psychological turning point for Rome. After Cannae, the Romans understood they were not invincible, that their traditional combat system had weaknesses, and that they faced an enemy who could think several moves ahead. It had all begun years before, when Hannibal crossed the Alps with elephants and a multinational army determined to bring war to the heart of Italy. It was not just a military campaign, but a desperate gamble by Carthage to survive against growing Roman power. After the First Punic War, Carthage had lost Sicily and been forced to pay enormous indemnities. The Phoenician city needed a decisive victory to avoid becoming a Roman satellite. Hannibal had already demonstrated his brilliance in 2 previous battles. At Trebia, he had used cold and fog to set a devastating ambush. At Lake Trasimene, he had lured an entire Roman army into a deadly trap among the hills. But these had been tactical victories. At Cannae, he sought something more ambitious: the total destruction of Roman military capacity. The strategic situation was complex. Rome controlled most of central Italy, but many cities in the south still doubted which side to choose. A decisive Carthaginian victory could convince these undecided allies to change sides. Hannibal needed a demonstration so crushing that no Italian would dare bet on Rome. During the winter of 217 to 216 before Christ, Hannibal had established his winter quarters in the region of Apulia, in southeastern Italy. From there, he launched raids against cities that remained loyal to Rome, sacking fields, capturing cattle, demonstrating that the Romans could not protect their allies. In spring, he took the city of Cannae, an important Roman grain depot situated beside the Aufidus River. The capture of Cannae was a calculated blow. The city not only had strategic value for controlling an important ford of the river, but also stored the grain reserves that Rome needed to feed its armies. By taking it, Hannibal forced the Romans to react. They could not allow an enemy to control their supply lines on Italian territory. The Roman Senate found itself divided on how to respond. Quintus Fabius Maximus, nicknamed the Delayer, had developed a strategy of attrition that avoided pitched battles. His troops followed Hannibal at a distance, attacked his foraging parties, cut his supply lines, but never confronted the Carthaginian army in open field. It was an intelligent tactic that took advantage of Roman advantages: control of territory, numerical superiority, capacity to replace losses. But this strategy did not satisfy the Roman people. Citizens saw their fields burn, their allies abandon them, their enemies stroll with impunity through Italy. They wanted action, revenge, a decisive victory that would restore the prestige of the Roman eagles. Merchants complained of economic losses. Ambitious politicians saw in a great battle the opportunity to reap military glory. By the year 216 before Christ, popular pressure had overcome prudence. The Senate decided to assemble the largest army in Roman history to definitively confront Hannibal. They appointed as consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro, 2 men with completely opposite personalities and military philosophies. Paulus was a cautious veteran, an admirer of Fabius Maximus's tactics. He had served in Illyria and knew the dangers of underestimating an intelligent enemy. He believed Rome should use its strategic advantages instead of seeking a decisive battle under unfavorable conditions. Varro, on the contrary, represented the hard line of Roman populism. He came from a plebeian family and had built his political career promising quick and decisive victories. He trusted in the traditional superiority of the legions and despised the cowardly tactics of Fabius. According to the Roman constitution, the two consuls alternated supreme command day by day. This division of authority, which worked well in peacetime, would become a fatal weakness against an enemy as cunning as Hannibal. The Carthaginian could predict what type of decisions each consul would make and plan accordingly. The army that Rome assembled for Cannae was impressive. 8 complete legions, each with more than 5,000 men. Auxiliary troops from Italian allies that doubled the number of legionaries. Roman and allied cavalry that totaled almost 6,000 riders. In total, more than 80,000 soldiers, the greatest concentration of military power that Rome had ever placed on a single battlefield. Each legion was a perfectly organized war machine. The hastati formed the first line, young soldiers armed with pilum javelins and gladius swords, protected by oval shields and mail armor. Behind came the principes, men in the flower of life with similar equipment but more experience. The third line was formed by the triarii, veterans with long spears who served as the final reserve. This manipular formation had conquered Italy and had proven its effectiveness against diverse enemies. Roman cavalry, although inferior in number to the Carthaginian, was formed by wealthy citizens who could afford to maintain war horses. Their Latin allies contributed additional riders, although the Italian equestrian tradition had never reached the levels of excellence of African or Hispanic peoples. Hannibal observed Roman preparations with the coldness of a chess player watching his opponent make predictable mistakes. His army was much smaller, barely 45,000 men, but it was a perfectly coordinated multinational force that had fought together for years. The core of his army was formed by African veterans, Libyan and Numidian soldiers who had fought in Spain and had crossed the Alps. These men wore armor captured from Romans in previous battles, a psychological irony that did not go unnoticed. Their round shields and long spears made them heavy infantry capable of facing legions in close combat. The Hispanics provided tactical versatility. Some fought as heavy infantry with curved blade falcata swords that could sever limbs with a single blow. Others served as light troops, harassing the enemy with javelins and withdrawing before it could respond. They had learned war fighting among themselves for generations and knew every trick of irregular warfare. The Gauls provided ferocity and psychological shock. Tall, blonde warriors who fought half-naked, shouting insults and brandishing long swords that generated terror among Mediterranean enemies. They lacked the discipline of the Africans or the cunning of the Hispanics, but their initial charge could break entire formations. Hannibal's true advantage was his cavalry. Numidian riders were the best in the known world. They rode without saddle or stirrups, controlling their horses only with their knees, which gave them incredible mobility. They could shoot arrows at full gallop, execute feigned charges, disappear like ghosts when the enemy counterattacked. The Hispanics added heavy cavalry capable of devastating frontal charges. At the end of July 216 before Christ, the two armies met near Cannae. The terrain was an extensive plain beside the Aufidus River, ideal for deploying large formations. Hannibal had chosen the battlefield carefully. The river would protect one of his flanks, limiting Roman maneuvering options. For several days there were minor skirmishes while both commanders studied the situation. Paulus, who had command that day, refused to give battle. He knew Hannibal's reputation and preferred to wait for a better opportunity. But the next day, command passed to Varro, who immediately ordered formation for battle. Varro had decided to use Roman numerical advantage in the most direct way possible. Instead of the traditional deployment in 3 lines, he concentrated his legions in a formation deeper than it was wide. The idea was to create a mass of men so dense it could pierce any enemy line through pure brute force. It was a tactic that had worked against less sophisticated enemies, but required the enemy to cooperate by fighting head-on. The Romans formed with their heavy infantry in the center, flanked by allied troops. Roman cavalry deployed on the right flank next to the river. Allied cavalry took position on the left flank. It was a solid but predictable formation, exactly what Hannibal expected. The Carthaginian deployment seemed strange to Roman eyes. Hannibal placed Gauls and Hispanics in the center, forming a convex line that protruded toward the Romans like the belly of a ship. African veterans positioned themselves on the flanks of this central formation, but slightly withdrawn. Heavy Hispanic and Gallic cavalry took position on the left flank under Hasdrubal's personal command. The Numidians deployed on the right flank. The morning of August 2nd dawned hot and clear. The southeast wind raised dust that bothered the Romans but favored the Carthaginians. Hannibal had calculated even this detail. Ritual sacrifices were performed on both sides. Although the Carthaginian soothsayers probably already knew the result their general expected to obtain. The battle began with a cavalry engagement on the Roman left flank. Hasdrubal launched his heavy cavalry against Roman riders in a devastating charge. The Romans, pressed between the river and the Carthaginians, had no space to maneuver. The fight was brief but brutal. Roman cavalry disintegrated. Some riders fled. Others died beside the waters of the Aufidus. Meanwhile, in the center, the main clash had begun. Roman legions advanced with their characteristic discipline, a wall of shields and iron that moved forward step by step. Hannibal's Gauls and Hispanics received them with war cries and the clash of metal against metal. At first, everything seemed to develop according to Varro's plans. The Carthaginian line gave ground. The Gauls, less disciplined than the Romans, slowly retreated under legionary pressure. The convex formation gradually flattened, then became concave. The Romans, seeing success, pressed harder. But this was exactly what Hannibal had planned. He had instructed his central troops to retreat in a controlled manner, maintaining cohesion but yielding ground. Meanwhile, the African units on the flanks remained motionless, waiting for their moment. The Romans, concentrated in their deep formation, were forced to compress their ranks as they advanced. Men in the rear pushed those in front, creating an increasingly dense human mass. Maneuvering became difficult, communication complicated, officers lost control of their units. Hasdrubal, after destroying Roman cavalry, had regrouped his riders and galloped to the other end of the battlefield. There, he attacked from behind the allied cavalry that was facing the Numidians. Caught between 2 fires, the allied riders also disintegrated. With all Roman cavalry out of combat, Hannibal had complete freedom to execute the second phase of his plan. When the Romans had advanced enough, when their formation was completely disordered by the advance through irregular terrain, he gave the signal. African veterans simultaneously attacked both flanks of the Roman mass. They were fresh troops who until that moment had barely fought. Their spears pierced the unprotected sides of the legions, who could not turn to face them due to the density of their own formation. It was the moment that defined the battle. The Romans found themselves attacked from 3 sides: Gauls and Hispanics in front, Africans to left and right. But the worst was yet to come. Hasdrubal had regrouped all Carthaginian cavalry and now attacked the Roman rear. The Roman formation became a death trap. Men in front could not retreat because those behind pushed them. Those behind could not flee because Carthaginian cavalry awaited them. Those on the flanks could not maneuver because they were crushed against their companions. Panic spread like fire. Soldiers shouted contradictory orders. Some tried to fight their way back. Others attempted to charge forward. Officers lost control. The legionary eagles, those sacred symbols of Rome, disappeared in the confusion. Paulus died fighting in the front line, desperately trying to reorganize his men. His death became a symbol of disaster, a Roman consul fallen defending the honor of legions disintegrating around him. Varro, the architect of catastrophe, managed to escape with a handful of riders. His flight saved his life, but not his reputation. Rome would blame him forever for the greatest defeat in its history. The slaughter lasted hours. The Carthaginians gave no quarter. They knew they were destroying Rome's military power and did not want to waste the opportunity. The trapped Romans fought with the desperation of men who know they are going to die, but the outcome was never in doubt. When the battle finally ended, the field of Cannae looked like a slaughterhouse. Ancient historians speak of 70,000 Roman dead, although the exact figure continues to be debated. What is not disputed is the magnitude of the disaster. Rome had lost the equivalent of 8 complete legions, along with thousands of allies and all its cavalry. The consequences were immediate. Several cities in southern Italy changed sides. Capua, the second most important city on the peninsula, opened its gates to Hannibal. In Sicily, pro-Carthaginian revolts erupted. Philip V of Macedonia signed an alliance with Carthage. For the first time in centuries, Rome faced the real possibility of total defeat. But Hannibal had won a battle, not the war. Rome, unlike other Mediterranean city-states, had practically unlimited human and material reserves. After the initial shock, the Roman Senate demonstrated the iron determination that had built their empire. They refused to negotiate, called up all available men, freed slaves to form new legions. The irony of Cannae is that Hannibal's perfect victory did not give him final victory. Rome learned the lesson, returned to Fabius Maximus's tactics, avoided pitched battles. During the following years, the Carthaginian genius found himself trapped in Italy, winning minor skirmishes but unable to deliver the definitive blow. The battle also changed the Roman military mentality. After Cannae, they never again trusted solely in numerical superiority or individual bravery. They developed new tactics, improved their cavalry, learned to use tactical flexibility. The humiliation of Cannae became the school that forged the legions that would conquer the Mediterranean. Years later, when Scipio defeated Hannibal at Zama using the Carthaginians' own tactics against him, the circle begun at Cannae was closed. Rome had learned that military genius knows no nationalities, that victory belongs to whoever best understands the art of war. In the plains beside the Aufidus River, where the most perfect battle in military history was fought, the bones of fallen legionaries mingled with the Italian earth they had died defending. Their sacrifice was not in vain. From the ashes of Cannae was born the imperial Rome that would dominate the world for centuries.